Hi, hello, Pip here, Queen Pip Cards. Thanks ever so much for being in, on my channel today and watching my video today. Today we are continuing with the watercolouring theme. So the last couple of weeks you saw me do the background for this background here with the Stamparatus technique for getting really great silhouettes. And then last week you saw me putting it together, making it look like a box frame. And we've had videos on watercolouring, blending techniques with inks and papers, etc. And we've got more watercolouring to come, which I can't tell you about yet. But first, I wanted to tell you about some no-line watercolouring. So this is the card that I made a couple of weeks ago now, and I thought it was about time that I showed you how to do it. So we're not going to be doing all of it because the watercolouring is what I want to focus on. And this is what's called no-line watercolouring. So it's trying to make it look as realistically as if you painted it as possible, when in actual fact I did paint it but I didn't draw it. So because I'm going to tell you a secret, I can't draw, well, not very well anyway. So so I need to have an outline. That's why I love stamping, because I don't have to draw. But sometimes it's nice to give the effect as if you'd drawn a flower and then coloured it in, or watercolour painted it. So to make this, we're going to need our Fluid 100 watercolour paper, which is the really soft watercolour paper that we have now. It has a much smoother surface than it used to, which is great. I love it. We have Magnolia Blooms, which is the smaller stamp set for the Magnolia, because I think that looks just like a wild rose here in the UK. So we're going to use it more as a wild rose and colour it as such. And then this piece here, which again you can look like a rose unfurling. So we're going to use these two stamps. And then on this piece, on this card here, I did actually use the sentiment from Perennial Birthday. I used this one here. Here's to Celebrating You, and it fits just beautifully into that circle that's from the Stitched Labels dies. Okay, this background's just a piece of gold foil, and I've run it through the Subtles embossing folder to give that absolutely beautiful look. And then I ran a piece of basic black again through the Subtles embossing folder, just so that they had a feel that went through the whole card. And then I painted the flowers. So we're going to get on straight onto it. I will need a piece of scrap paper. So let me just pull out, what have I got here? Let me just pull out this piece of scrap. We won't need it for very long. It's literally just for the initial stamping on and off. So you want to have this as a really soft colour, okay? So we've picked Sahara Sand because Sahara Sand is one of our softest. I've picked this one because it's one of our softest browns. You could also use Smoky Slate or possibly even Grey Granite, but you'd need to, again, do what I'm doing here, which is going to be stamping off. So we stamp the image, get nice colour, and then we stamp it off again, and then stamp it onto our watercolour cardstock. Now this requires you to just hold it a little bit, just so that you do have enough of a line to actually paint, but you can see there's not much there. You can just about see the flower. Okay, so that's that one, and then we'll do the same with the small one, and we're going to need two of those. And this one, I didn't hold it on so long, so it's come out fainter. That's okay, there we go. So it's just to give your eye a guideline as to where we're putting the dark. Now you do need to be careful. Here I managed to pick up a few stray pieces from, I don't know where they're from, but we've had a few stray pieces land, and so they've given me a few little dark spots, but I'm not going to panic about them because they're going to be where we're going to be colouring and painting over. Now the colours I used were Flirty Flamingo and Daffodil Delight for the actual flower itself, and then Mossy Meadow for the leaves. Okay, so we don't need this anymore. I'll get rid of this messy piece. And then the other piece of equipment that you're going to need is your aqua painter. Okay, so these come in a set of two. This is the one I use the most often, which is the finer nib. Okay, the other one's slightly larger, but I don't use that one quite so much. It's great for big washes and stuff, but not when you're painting. So we'll just open up our ink pads. As I say, this is the Flirty Flamingo. And you're going to just pick up some water with your paintbrush, your aqua painter rather, and make sure that you've squeezed out some water so it's got some liquid to it. And then we start one leaf at a time. And if you think it's too watery, then you can just brush that off onto a paper towel. And we start one leaf at a time because we want the ink to merge, so we don't want it to dry. Although, to be honest, with this watercolour paper, it doesn't really dry. You can go back in and still pick up colour even once it looks like it's dried. It's really great. It gives a great watercolour effect. Now I'm actually going over all of the lines. If you need to have a guide, you can put the actual stamp set in front of you. I find this, when I can get it flat, I find this does help sometimes, just so that I can see where I should be painting. And then I leave a petal, move it round, and start with another petal. And the reason why I'm doing this is because I want the water to dry, the ink to dry as much as possible. This one comes down here, comes up. There's a line there, so remember you always put in the lines, the dark bits of the lines, because that's where Stampin' Up has already told us, the artist has already told us that's where a bit of shadow is, and then we lighten around it. And you just do this for each of the petals in turn. And this, and then you can go back in if you want to and add a bit more colour, which is what I generally do. So I try and get it so that they dry, and then I'll go back in and add more colour to it. So here, dark, where the lines are, put a dark line along the middle, ink up, get more water flowing, and then just blend that in. And it's very relaxing, because you know you're not going to go wrong, because all you're doing is, it's like painting by numbers really, you're just following the lines. And if it needs a bit more merging, you can bring in a little bit more colour there so it just blends in. There we go. And now you can see that this one's drying quite nicely here, so you can probably go in and add this one. So we come back here. And you just do this for all of them and for all of the leaves. And if you want to add a whiter, a little bit more white space, you can either leave it blank, so you can just, you know, not put very much in, or you can make it really wishy-washy and just do a really light colour there, and then go back in and do a darker colour around. That leaves it looking, you know, very much lighter here. Or you can actually go in and use your tissue and lift the colour off. So I have a big roll of this stuff, generally on hand. And you can go in and you can just lift colour out. So you can add liquid to it, make it wetter again, and then lift. And see, that lifts the colour slightly. So you can add some highlights like that if you want to. But that's up to you when you get a bit more confident maybe of how you want it to look. We need a bit more colour, I think. I don't think it's dark enough for that piece. And then a bit of light, and as we say, a little bit of lifting. There we go. And so yes, I'm just going to carry on and colour this, and then once we've got the dark areas done, we will put the yellow in and then come in and do the flower, to do the leaves. So if I just wipe that off, good thing about these is you just clean them by squeezing the water through, and then it just washes the ink off the end of your nib. So we'll close that for a moment, and I'll just come in and do some Mossy Meadow. And I just want to show you here, we do exactly the same with the leaves. So with the leaves, we just do the outline and then the centre line. So I do the outline and then the centre line, and you can do the little feathering like so, and then leave that a little to sort of dry off, and then just, you can go back in again afterwards, mix up some more ink with a bit more water, and you can go in and pop the colour in. Now this will merge, and then you go back and you do it again just with a bit more outline until it's the nicest and the right colour for you. You know, everybody's different. You might want to have a little darker leaves at the base coming up to lighter, so if you do that, then you are going to overwash the actual veins that you painted in there to start off with, but that's okay, then you just put them in again. That's the whole point of watercolouring, is that it's, you know, based out of layers of colour. So hopefully you can see that that's how I then built up this flower. So let me show you how I went back in again now that it's dry. Some of these are drier, and just added a bit more of the dark. So if I just want to give that a bit of definition there, I just add a bit more of the dark underneath and bring it down that line. Not massively, but it's just enough to show. And you can do that line, and then you could do, you know, if you wanted to, you could do, in some flowers they have these sort of patterns on the petals, so you can go back in and do those patterns after you've done your initial painting. And as long as you don't add too much more water, then you're okay. When you add a bit too much water, it all starts merging again, and that's when you get the sort of blobby effect, which is never good. You never want to have a blobby effect. There we go. I prefer working from in to out, but you can go the other way, just depending on how the petal's sitting, really. And then I can come in now and do, let's do this one. So you start to think that, oh, it's all going to merge together and then it's all going to look rubbish, but actually it doesn't if you make them darker at the bottom, and then rinse off your ink and paler it towards the top, because you can just blend that pale one back in like so. And then when that's dry, I'll go back in and I'll do more lines on that one. So it's a really simple technique. You just have to be confident to just follow the lines that the stamper's given you, and just accept that that is where it's supposed to be. And once you can do that, then you can colour, and you can do a spot of watercolouring and feel like you've achieved a really pretty watercolour floral effect. So there you go, that's no line watercolouring. And once you've done it all and you've allowed it to dry, then I just cut them out by hand, and I popped them up. I cut the whole thing out, so I went all the way around the flower and the leaves. You could obviously, if you wanted to, do two of these and layer the top one up. You could cut out individual petals and layer them up if you wanted to have a more decoupaged effect, but I didn't think that it was necessary to do that. I liked it just popped up on a few dimensionals, and then I did the smaller ones in the same way. These ones are slightly harder because you have less to follow. You know, it's all small petals, So you just have to be a bit more patient and go back in and put back in some of those lines afterwards. But that's really it, and I think it's a most effective technique to just give you a real sense that you can watercolour and to build up your confidence in watercolouring, because you're not having to start from scratch and think, oh, I've got to, do trees and all this kind of stuff, and how do I do a petal, how do I draw a flower, how do I draw leaves on the flower. You don't have to do any of that. Just stamp it very lightly and then go over it how in each individual petal, and you'll get that dimension if you follow how they've done it with the shadowing on the stamp set itself. So there you go, that is my no line watercolour tutorial. I told you it was really quick, but now hopefully you've got itchy fingers to go out and start this yourself. As I say, I've got more watercolouring coming. You can look in the description below and you'll see all of the tutorials that I've done on watercolouring. I actually did some a really long time ago on splatting and various other watercolour ink techniques, so I'll link to that playlist and then you can have a look at that. And feel free to have a look at all of my other videos as well, because there's loads of techniques out there that I've videoed for you. And I'll be back again with more tomorrow and back again next week. So thanks ever so much for watching. Take care for now. Bye bye.